Hello, precious, dear heart. I am so happy that you are here with us. My name is Nuna Isima, and I'm your hostess. Please find yourself a comfortable space where you're not going to be interrupted for the next hour. And you may burn a candle, or light some incense, or burn some essential oils, and create a nice space for you to just soften and relax. And please take a couple of deep belly breaths, calling all of yourself right back into your sacred body temple, right here in this moment of time. And you may exhale with a sound. And I invite you to feel your connection to Mother Earth, to her supportive, nurturing, nourishing energy, either through the soles of your feet or through your intention. And so I welcome you into this coming session. Welcome back to the iRise Summit. I am ecstatic to have Sheri Winston with us. She is a groundbreaking, award-winning author and teacher who offers empowering, entertaining, erotic education for everyone. She is the author of the award-winning Women's Anatomy of Arousal, Secret Maps to Bird Pleasure, which won the American Association of Sex Educators, Counselors, and Therapists 2010 Book of the Year. She's also the author of Succulent SexCraft, Your Hands-On Guide to Erotic Play and Practice. She is the founder of the Intimate Art Center. Sheri offers pleasure-centered sex ed for grown-ups with a wide variety of practical and transformational intimate arts education. She delights in inspiring people to have a lot more pleasure, fun, and fulfillment. Her unique holistic offerings are informed by her 18 years as a sexuality teacher, on top of decades of practice as a certified nurse, midwife, gynecology practitioner, registered nurse, childbirth educator, and massage therapist. Welcome, welcome, Sheri.
Oh, thank you so much for having me here. It's really a pleasure, such a pleasure to be here.
It is such a pleasure that you are on this summit. I knew that the summit would not be complete without your work. Your work is fundamental, primal, and so needed, especially in this time. So I want to start by saying that I read your book, Women's Anatomy of Arousal, and this is a must. It is absolutely the Bible of women understanding of their anatomy, of their pleasure. And I would like you to start by introducing this book and what made you write it.
Oh, I would be delighted. This is the book, in fact, Women's Anatomy of Arousal. And I am more proud of this book than probably anything I have done in my entire life. I had been working, as you said, in the world of birth primarily for over 25 years. And I was always teaching a little something on the side for a lot of years, what I called womencraft classes. And I had started to discover that what I learned in school, and mind you, we're talking about studying anatomy 5 different times in all my different forms of education, what I had learned in school was incomplete, some places incorrect, but most astoundingly, that it left out really important parts of my body, your body, and about half the people on the planet's bodies. And I was shocked at how here I was, a medical professional with all these initials after my name, working in the field, working with women, and there was all this stuff that seemed so basic, and yet I didn't know. So I started what I call now the hunt for buried pleasure. I started finding out, well, what else is missing? And doing that and putting it into this class and teaching about it and learning about it and teaching about it. And it became very clear to me, especially as I transitioned from being a midwife to people's babies to being a midwife of people's sexuality, that this information was foundational, that we all needed to have it. And I had had the experience of, as I discovered it, having my own relationship with my body, my relationship with my sexuality, my ability to have pleasure, to access my orgasm, to expand all of those things, which I thought was already pretty good, just absolutely had this quantum explosion in the quality and, well, maybe the quantity, I don't know. But certainly the quality of the experience changed so dramatically. And then as I was teaching it for years, I would see, as I was teaching it, women's responses when I would explain what we had, where it was, how it was connected, why it works together. And they were having the same kinds of epiphanies I had had of like, oh, that's why that works, or that's why that doesn't work. And I also direct this towards people who don't own this equipment, but like to partner with people who do. So I also have been teaching this information to people who partner with women who also found this to be extremely useful in their quest to make their partners happy. So it's been absolutely inspiring, and that's what got me to write the book, because I was teaching, sure, hundreds, maybe a few thousand people have heard me teach this material, but I needed to reach lots more, because this information, it's not even just about pleasure, it's about health, it's about self-esteem. I mean, there's just so many things that are built on this foundation of understanding our body and understanding not just our plumbing, but our wiring and our psyches. And so it's been just a delight to me, because this is my mission, to get this information out to everyone.
Right. And it's not only that we have been lacking proper education when it comes to our body and sexuality, but also the information that was present in the medical books was, as you said, incomplete and incorrect. And so what do you think was how did that happen? What brought it to that state?
Well, it's actually a wonderful story, and I'll try and give the short version, but it really is about the weaving together of all these different strands of history that brought us where we are today. So it's about the study of anatomy. How did people even begin to understand what was inside a human body? Keeping in mind that for a long time, dissecting and studying a cadaver was either illegal or outlawed by the church. So just the idea that you would figure out what's going on in anybody's body. Then, as bodies began to be studied, it was generally male bodies that were studied. Mm-hmm. And then everything was assumed that the male body was the standard and the female was some weird variation. So we've got that issue. In fact, we still have that in science, because diseases that only affect, say, penis owners are much more studied than diseases that affect people who have a biological vagina, for example. Anyway, so so they studied male bodies, and then there's some things about the female body that are a little bit more complex. We're set up to not just have sexual pleasure, but to make babies, and designed to bond and attach to those babies and successfully feed those babies and nourish them and have them grow up to be large enough people that they can make their own babies. Right? That's the template. So we've got a lot more complexity in our system. And then there's more. There's the whole Victorian times when women, I should note, upper class white women were considered to not be sexual beings, didn't have orgasms. The only reason you had sex was to please your husband and to serve God and your country and make some babies. And of course, women of color and poor women, they were still sluts, but in that model, it didn't really count. What counted was these high socioeconomic, high status women. And since they were considered to not be sexual, why would they have sexual parts? Their duty was to make babies. So a lot of the parts that I discovered had been found somewhere along the line historically. And then 100, 200 years ago, they started dropping out. They started disappearing. And till we got to the point where there were books, about 100, 120 years ago, that didn't even have any of the components of the clitoris, right? Because that's all about pleasure. So why would you have a clitoris if you're just there to make babies? And so in the last 100 years, we've been getting parts back. So even things like, there's a famous book in the 70s, it was kind of a breakthrough book called The Joy of Sex. It's like the first mainstream book that crossed over. And they don't even mention the word clitoris, for example. So we started getting parts back 30, 40, 50 years ago. But we still haven't gotten the whole thing. And this is the whole thing. And that's why it's so important that we start to get this information out so people can see the whole system. It's a system, an integrated, overlapping, interlocking system. And it's so brilliant. And so, evolution is just like this brilliant intelligence to it that creates a system that gives us sexual pleasure, like I call it the baby's bliss and bonding system, right? We have sexual bliss and pleasure, and that helps us bond with partners, and we can make babies, and then that same system helps us feed babies and then blissfully bond with our babies, which is what we're designed to do. And so we've got everything. It's all connected. None of it's separate. And when you start seeing the whole system, you start understanding those connections. And then you would start saying things like, the way we have babies in this country is ridiculous. I'm in the United States, and we're so bad at babies. We're terrible. Most of the industrialized world is the same way. Not all, but most. Because we don't understand that birth is a sexual act, that there is a component of the trance state that's the same in arousal as it is in labor. And if we don't create an environment conducive to that state, a lot of women are not going to be able to have effective labors. They're going to wind up with C-sections. The same way we have a lot of women who haven't learned how to access their orgasm yet, because we're not helping create that foundational, the template and the information and understanding the body and how it works that's going to enable them to go into that trance state and get to their orgasm. So all connected. Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I birthed 3 babies at home, and it was ecstatic experience. It was painful. But that pain was an initiation. It was like a gateway into something so big, and life was moving through, and the angelic realm surrounding, and it was just, it definitely connected me to my raw power. So I know exactly what you're talking about. And yes, it's so very connected. And I know that you had a very big discovery about the anatomy of the vagina. Do you want to speak a little bit about that? This is really important information.
Well, I'll say how it started. So here I am. I'm working as a midwife. I've been to school all these years. I'm around a lot of vaginas. I'm familiar with them. And I pick up this book called New View of a Woman's Body. This came out in the 70s. It was by these lay health workers who started to recognize that the anatomy that we were taught and that medical professionals were taught was incomplete. And there was a chapter on the female genitalia. And there was a part there called the vestibular bulbs. And I still remember reading the page going, the what? Vestibular bulbs? I've never heard of that. Reading it again, looking at the diagram, like there's anatomy drawings, reading it a third time, and then putting the book down and getting a mirror and checking my own body. And the vestibular bulbs are one of the components of what I now call the erectile network. And they're made out of erectile tissue, just like a penis is made out of erectile tissue. So here I am checking myself and going, I don't know what they're talking about. And then I realized, well, it's erectile tissue. I have to play with it. So I'm doing my homework. I'm a good student. I am really researching away there. So as I'm researching myself, I'm watching. I'm looking in a mirror, and I watch just under the labia. I watch the bulbs puff up. I feel them puff up, and I'm and then I just had another moment of both, I guess, epiphany and also some upset of like, wow, that's amazing. And at the same time, how did I not know? How did I, how have I been sexually active for decades and a professional who specializes in this area and not know it? And they're so obvious when they get big and puffy. And so that's what got me started on that whole quest, because I figured, well, if I could miss this, a part that once it's engorged is really obvious. If I could miss this, what else am I missing? And then I discovered all of the other parts of the erectile network. So you can think of what we call the clitoris is really the head of the clitoris. And that's like the jewel in the crown. And there's a network, a circuit of structures that are all made of erectile tissue. And what's interesting about the erectile tissue in the female body is we can get stimulated, aroused, and have orgasms with just part of our network activated. Penis owners, that's not how it works. It's kind of an all or nothing system. Either the whole penis is engorged. I mean, the whole thing can be semi-engorged, it can be semi-soft, but you can't have the head of it be hard and the base be soft, right? It's all kind of a one unit. So what I realized is that we've been playing the piano and we think there's 22 keys on the piano. And we're making nice music with our 22 keys. And suddenly I started realizing, oh no, there's 88 keys on the piano and there's foot pedals. And started recognizing all of these parts. And it's been profound. At the same time, there's this frustration. The 21st century? This isn't rocket science, right? This isn't like going to the moon. This is bodies. They're right here. They're not that hard to study at this point, and yet hardly any study has been done of this equipment, and we still have, debate about parts of it, whether they exist or not. And then there are parts that most people just have still never heard about. So we have a way to go.
We do have a way to go, yes, and thank you for bringing this to the awareness, and yeah, this is time to really reclaim it.
Right. Do you want a little tour on the pussy pillow?
Yes, please.
I call it the pussy pillow, unless I have to be more discreet, and then I call it the vulva pillow.
The yoni pillow.
The yoni pillow also. So here we have the opening of the vagina, and the vagina is really just this part in here. All the rest is vulva. Inner lips, outer lips, the hood, and here we have the head of the clitoris. It's the part that we pretty much know about. We know it's there. Under the hood, there's the shaft of the clitoris. So the head, the shaft is right here. You can roll your finger here and feel it. And then there are legs, and the legs are like a wishbone. They go like that, down and in. And in a state of non-engorgement, you really can't feel them at all. But when you're really engorged, you press down under here at the base of the shaft here, and you can feel the top of the legs. and then they kind of vanish into the tissue. So that's the 3 parts of the clitoris. That probably about maybe 25% of anatomy books will include the 3 parts of the clitoris. So that's progress. We also have what I was talking about before, the vestibular bulbs. They're big wads of tissue under here and here, one on either side. And these are the ones that I first discovered, and these are the ones that blew my mind, because when you start playing with these, squeezing and playing with them, they get huge. It's like the Pillsbury Doughboy. I don't know if anyone even remembers that character, but they just like puff up. They're just so obvious. And they're right here on either side of the vaginal opening. And what I discovered, and has been subsequently confirmed by many, many people who own this equipment, is that, well, it can feel nice to have something in your vagina, or not nice. When these bulbs are really big and puffy, then having something inside the vagina starts to feel fabulous. So you can see how they're kind of designed based on that evolutionary reproductive template. Keeping in mind, it's always important to remember we're humans, so we've gone far beyond that. Sex for us is about way more than making babies. But in the ancient evolutionary past, these systems designed to make us want to make babies. And so having erectile tissue here that would make us go, oh yeah, having something inside would feel awesome, right? Makes a lot of sense. You know, I just want to say, you know, many women don't have orgasms from penetration. I know I didn't when I first became sexually active, and I thought there was something wrong with me. And many women think there's something wrong with them, or their partner thinks there's something wrong. Because penis and vagina intercourse is not the easiest way to get to orgasm for most of us. But if you've taken the time to get the clitoral structures and the vestibular bulbs engorged, and wait, there's more inside, which I'll tell you about in a moment, and to get the inner erectile tissue engorged, then intercourse is just at this whole other level of fabulous, and much more likely to lead to orgasms. That's a whole nother topic in class. But anyway, let me just tell you the rest of the erectile tissue. So if we went inside the vagina and we went down, so if we went in and down into the floor, down here, between the vagina and the anus, there's a big wad of erectile tissue under there. Last but not least, there's erectile tissue above the roof of the vagina. You put fingers in and you push up, you'd be touching that. Now, this is what people are currently referring to as the G-spot. I hate calling it that. It's
Yes.
named after the man who discovered it. He didn't have one. It's not a spot. He describes it incorrectly as a round, dime-sized spot. What we actually have up here is a tube of erectile tissue that surrounds the tube of the urethra. In fact, there's the urethral opening, there's the pee hole, and the end of the tube is around the pee hole. Actually, when I made this, I actually created a structure inside there, an actual thing, so you can see when this is really engorged. From the outside, you can see the end of it. And then when it's really engorged and you play inside, you can feel the length of it. You can put your fingers on either side and sort of feel the gutters. And so when all of those erectile components are engorged, you get 2 overlapping, interlocking circuits of erectile tissue. One that goes around here, a cuff here, a second one that includes the clitoral structures, and they overlap, interlock, and when you get that whole system activated, the pleasure is just really at a level that I didn't know existed. So it takes a little time. It's helpful if you have some internal skills, you know how to turn yourself on using breathing and sound and your pelvic floor muscles. It helps if you have, when you're having sex with yourself, when you're having solo sex or partnered sex, you take the time that all of these structures really enjoy to get big and puffy. And when you do that, oh, it's so worth it. So there you go. There you have your little tour.
Oh, I love that. It is so enlightening. And sure, this is something that we really need to be taught at school, when it's age,
Mhm.
blossoming into adulthood. This is really vital. And yeah, I really hope that that's going to be the future. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's more. I mean, this is just about this component, but I'll just add, for example, I was taught in school that the uterus has nothing to do with arousal and orgasm. That's not true. It does. So if you own a uterus and you have medical people telling you to take it out, unless there's a really good reason, like if it's cancerous, I get why you would take it out. But 95 to 97% of hysterectomies, of removal of the uterus in the United States, are not for cancer. Statistics will vary from country to country, but we still have a lot of people, a lot of medical people suggesting that you get it out if there's any problem with it, especially if you're past the age of making babies. And they'll say it's not going to interfere with your sex. It's not going to make pleasure less. And you know what? That's just wrong. It does. Now, doesn't mean you can't have awesome sex and pleasure without a uterus. We can. We're wonderfully plastic. We can reprogram ourselves. We can learn to use all the other equipment wonderfully. I mean, even people who are paralyzed from the waist down can learn how to have orgasms with stimulation of their fingers or their mouth. So if you don't have a uterus, I'm not saying you're not going to have awesome sex. But if you do have one, try and hang on to it. Don't believe what they say because they just don't know any better.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I really have to ask you this question. What can women do to become orgasmically proficient and develop orgasmic mastery? I think this is very valid for lots of women.
So valid. So important because, women, we have to learn our path to orgasm. And so to start with, I would say it's so useful to have the map of the anatomy. And I'll mention beyond buying the book or taking, one of the recorded online courses, just go to my website. There's a bunch of blogs that will at least give you an introduction and a few simple drawings that I've done to get you going. So you could just start there. Just go look at the free stuff on my website. Encourage you to buy the book because then you've got it and you can look at it and there's lots of information that's going to talk about the anatomy and also the other stuff I'm about to talk about. So there are resources you can get. So number one, learn what you've got. Number two, start developing your toolkits. By toolkits, I mean, I believe inside of us, we all have tools in our mind, body, heart, and spirit toolkits, and learn how to use them. So in our body toolkit, we have breath, for example, sound, touch, movement, and so forth. In our mind, we've got our attention and our awareness and our imagination are some of our tools of the mind that we can learn to use. We have tools of the heart, our love skills. How do we love? And I'll say that when I'm talking about these things, there's a primary level where we learn how to use them with ourselves, and then a secondary level where we can use them with a partner. But I'm really talking primary here because your foundational relationship is with yourself. So this primary relationship is where it starts. So in the love skills, this is about self-love and self-nurturing. And those are skills of the heart. How do we learn how to love ourselves? Not always so easy. Forgiving ourselves. Oh, that can be hard. And I believe one of the heart skills is courage. And if you want to explore your sexual potential, it's going to take courage because you're going to have to go through the fears and anxieties and the negative messages and the negative experiences, and you're going to have the opportunity to work that and work through it. So that takes courage, and that's a heart skill. How do we do something even when we're scared to do it? And then if we choose, we can add spiritual skills, making altars, doing ceremonies, things like that. And so learning how to use all of those, or the ones that most appeal to you, don't have to use all of them. You can start with the 3 or 4 that appeal to you. You can play with breathing and sound and touch, and maybe create a ritual out of that. that's a great way to start. And like I said, you can do this with yourself. And in fact, I think the foundational classroom, learning laboratory, spa, and pleasure temple is here. So start here. If you have partners, yes, certainly go on adventures and learning journeys with them as well. But make sure to have your own with yourself.
Right.
That's a
Right.
quick overview. Uh,
Yeah, so yeah, it starts from within, and wherever you are, know that if something stands in your way to orgasm, you can break through it, and you are equipped to have orgasms, and
mm-hmm,
and nothing is wrong with you if you haven't experienced them until now, right?
So important. It's like learning to play an instrument. There's nothing, if you don't know how to play the piano, you're not embarrassed or ashamed, or you don't think you're broken. It's just, it's a skill set. I haven't learned it yet. I can learn. I could start now, and I can learn. And sex is just like that. You can learn it at any time, at any age. And if you haven't yet learned your path to orgasm, or found an assured path to orgasm, or gone on beyond proficiency, develop mastery, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with you. And in fact, it's not surprising, because where would you learn this stuff? It's not like you go to the club and take tennis lessons, right? I mean, where do you get orgasm lessons? Other than people like me, there's not a lot of places. And you've had so many negative messages. And not just about sex, though those are, obviously all over the place, but also about your body and your own experience. I mean, I grew up in a house where you were told to eat all the food on your plate, because there were children starving in Africa. And nobody said to me, check in with your body and see if it's hungry, right? It was just, there was no, if you went to the store with your mom and you saw a toy that you wanted, my mom would be, oh, you don't want that. It's just a piece of crap. But I did want it, right? So there was just no acknowledgement. It wasn't like somebody going, I can see why you would want that. We can't buy it today, or maybe we can some other day, but I get that you want it, There's the time I didn't want to kiss my great-great-grandmother because she was old and smelled funny, and I said that out loud. The horror, right? I was so ashamed for that. But nobody was saying, you have personal boundaries, and that's okay. You have a choice. We understand that you may or may not want to do this, and this is why, but nobody told me that it was okay to have boundaries about my body, right? These are all things that we have the opportunity to work through as adults, and to play with, and to start recognizing. Part of that healing is recognizing the negative messages and reprogramming our brains.
Exactly. So, yeah, rewiring. And we also been given very negative messages about pleasure. So yeah, we grew up thinking that we don't deserve it, or if we want it, then something is wrong with that.
Yeah, in classes, sometimes do an exercise where we write down, like on the board, everybody's messages about pleasure, and we fill a board. It's indulgent, it's lazy, it's it's everything from sinful to it's not in alignment with the work ethic. You should be doing something more important. Because it's interesting to hear, a room full of people's negative messages about pleasure, and then we do the positives, and they're like this many. I mean, there's just a few positives, but huge amount of negative messages about pleasure. Yeah.
Sure.
Sad.
Very sad. This is definitely something we need to change.
Yeah.
We need to change that. Yeah, it's amazing how we born so open to pleasure. I mean, if you look at a baby, it thrives on pleasure. Just touch it and nurture it, and massage it, and it opens up, and that's how we come into the world. And somehow along the way, we get the feedback that it is not okay, and never mind sexual pleasure, every other form of pleasure, even if it's pleasure from an art form or, singing or, I've been just speaking to my sister the other day and she said to me, she's a musician. And she said, when I sit and write my music, my father's voice is at the back of my head. You should be doing something, of value, as if that is not value enough.
Uh-huh. Oh, it's so true. But here's also a thing. You're right about the we're born, open to pleasure. However, you had home birth, right? And I've done a lot of home births, and those babies come out ecstatic and beaming. They're not crying, they're not screaming, they're not freaked out. They come out and they're like, right? Everybody's in this ecstatic bubble together. And the babies are like, it'd be so amazing. That's not the birth experience most of us have. All right? If you were born in a hospital, you did not get that environment. You got taken away from your mom. Terrifying. How terrifying is that? You're in a cold place. Strangers are poking and prodding and doing things to you, and you're terrified because, of course, in a home birth, baby gets born. It's right on, mommy. It never goes away unless there's a really good reason, right? Even then, anything you need to do with the baby, you do it right there. So the baby's in physical contact with mom and hearing the heartbeat, and everybody's being quiet, and the lights are dim, and it's just this beautiful thing. And so most of us, our first experience in this incarnation was not positive. It was scary and cold and terrifying. And then maybe we got wrapped up, probably got washed and was cold. And then we got wrapped in lots of clothes and layers. And then all bundled up, we got put in our mother's arms. Where was the skin? We were like, we were dying for skin. And then again, breastfeeding rates vary around the world, but we still have a lot of babies who do not get the warm, soft breast full of delicious, endless supply of milk with mommy's face right there beaming at us. That's what we're designed to get. And you will see babies, no matter how they were born, most of them, if they get that, they're ecstatic. They're just ecstatic at the breast. Watching a baby at the breast is such a picture of ecstasy and sacredness. It used to be all over art that we'd see a Madonna and baby at the breast. Now it's considered profane, but anyway. But what about the babies who never get that? They're all wrapped up, they're enclosed, they get a plastic nipple in their mouth. And it's just not the same. It's so pleasurable. They're getting food, they're getting fed, they're being held, hopefully, but it's just not the same full-on sensory experience. And so a lot of us, I think, are getting programmed very young. And then, of course, when we do things that are self-pleasuring, this is an interesting difference between how we treat little girls and little boys. Little boys, we are showing them how to touch their penis every day and point it at the toilet when we're trying to teach them how to pee in the toilet, right? Every single day, they're going to touch their penis multiple times a day. And then they're going to play with their penis because it feels good. And most of the time, at least in our culture, at least for around, you see little boys, you're like, oh, well, boys will be boys. They just can't keep their hands off their penis. But we kind of don't usually give them a big negative shaming message. Look what happens. You see a little 2-year-old girl stick her hand in her diaper, in her panties, and the reaction that she gets about that. And it's often very, very different. So I think also as women, we have a whole other set of messages. Obviously, nobody is encouraging us to touch our vulvas every day because we don't need to touch it in order to pee in the potty. So there's so many messages. And I'll just add that as women, we are more vulnerable to violence and sexually negative experiences, a whole range of, incest and assault. And that can happen to boys too. It happens more to girls. And so anyone who has that kind of experience also has things that they will need to heal.
Right.
There's a lot.
Yeah, and as you say, need to heal, I just want to bring the conversation back to the birth because I'm a breathwork facilitator, and I've done so many groups where we work on the birth experience. And I have seen miracles happen of people literally rebirthing themselves. They going through almost the birth canal, and you can see it in their body language, in their movements. I even smelled once anesthetics coming out of somebody's body as they were processing their birth. So as you were talking about the birth experience, I just want to put it out there that no matter what was your own birth, or even the birth that you have been giving to your babies, it is all, it can be healed. So feel any overwhelming feelings of perhaps guilt or sadness or anything like that, I just want to take a moment to say that, the main thing is that you are here and your babies are here, and it all can be healed and worked through. So I just want to put that out there.
I just want to second that. And, whatever negative experiences have happened to you, whatever traumas, it's absolutely healable. And I have seen people heal in remarkable ways and heal from some really horrific experiences and, or upbringings or birth experiences. And there is a place on the other side of that. Maybe it's never some kind of weird idea of perfect, but there's a place on the other side of that where you're not living in the trauma, where you've repatterned your body, and you've really learned how to make your experience blissful and ecstatic. Now it's all possible.
Right.
So,
Really we are naturally wired for pleasure, and so it's really just coming back home and getting rid of everything that stands in the way. So you don't have to do anything to be able to experience pleasure. All we have to do is actually clear everything that stops us from it, because it is our natural state.
Yeah, so true. It's like I said, it's like if you've got a blackboard that's just got all these negative messages and all this stuff written on it, you've got to wipe that stuff off, clear that, and then you can start writing more positive messages. But we have to unlearn, heal. Oh, we don't have to. We have the option of healing and unlearning and reprogramming. And yes, your body is designed to be healthy and vibrant, and your pleasure is designed into the system. So it's not an add-on. It's part of the package.
Right. And living in that pleasure zone means that you have more vitality and more health, and it's like it's like a spiral that just goes up and up. When you allow that to happen, it's just feeds on its own and grows, and right. It's
it's a system. Just kind of like, the physical body is this integral system, and it is totally integral with the emotional body, the spiritual, the mental, all of these things. You can't separate it. I could separate it out to talk about it or to try and focus the learning on a piece of it, but you can't really separate it. It's all integrated. So
right.
Another piece of it.
Right. And so if you work on yourself spiritually, you also actually work on yourself physically. And if you work on yourself physically, you also work on other aspects. So it's all very intertwined, right?
It is. And that's also why you can approach it from whatever path speaks to you, right? Some people, that spiritual path will really speak to them, and that's a great way to approach it. Other people, that doesn't resonate with them, but it's like, fine, approach it on the physicals. Play with breathing, play with sound, right? Some people are more mentally wired, so it's like, great, play with awareness and attention and using your imagination or borrowing other people's imagination, right? So it's also that you can take what resonates with you and what's going to be easiest. Find an easy path. It doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be a struggle. Find what's easy and pleasurable, and take little steps and then another little step, and then combine two things, and then you'll start it becomes easier. Again, like playing the piano. First, it's going to feel awkward. You're going to make mistakes. And we're not very tolerant of mistakes either. But mistakes are how we learn. So you can make mistakes and go like, oh, that was an interesting mistake. Wow, what did I learn from my mistake? I mean, it's all a learning opportunity. And you take little steps, and you master one little skill, and you master another one, and then they start getting integrated and natural. And then just like, driving a car or something, and then just, first you're thinking about everything you're doing, and then you're just doing it. Mm-hmm. And the same with this. And then you really can, just like a musician can develop mastery and become a virtuoso, you can become that of your erotic self. An erotic virtuoso and have mastery over your instrument, and then it becomes easier and easier and easier to get into those really expanded altered states that arousal can become. Arousal is an altered state of consciousness, and you can go far in that state.
And as every mastery, it takes practice. So right, it's really about practicing your sexuality, bringing it into the forefront, bringing it into the consciousness, knowing that this is your birthright. And if you have that choice made that I am going to master this body, this instrument, this body temple that I've been given for this lifetime, and it has so many buried pleasures, right? That's how you called your book. We have so many pleasures that we are not even, we're not even aware of this, we not, if we haven't experienced it, we don't even know what we're missing.
That's also true. I mean, I did not know what was possible 20 or 30 years ago. And in fact, if you had told me some of the things, like, oh, well, you can have dozens and dozens of orgasms, I'd have been like, well, I don't know. I mean, on a good night, 3 was like, whoa, that was something. But if you told me then, well, yeah, you could have 3 dozen and, no problem. Or you could have an orgasm that just goes on for half an hour or something. I thought, oh, yeah, right, But then you start developing these skills, and then you access that, and then you're like, oh, yeah, I know how to do that now. I could keep that going. I could just access it, more and more, and suddenly it's way bigger, wilder, more ecstatic than you ever imagined. And so there's another little piece of this. When you're in that deeply altered state of arousal, is an amazing time to do any kind of healing work, any reprogramming. So when you're in a high level arousal, if you want to reprogram something like, about how you feel about your body or something, that is a great time to just, when you're in that state of arousal, to give yourself some, I love my body is wonderful, my body is healthy, whatever you want to work on, say that mentally or out loud when you're in that state of arousal, and it will be a profound time to do the healing work. It like amplifies whatever you're doing.
Right. I second that so much, because this is really the closest state that we can have with the divine spirit, God, however you want to call this higher power energy. This is the most intimate moment that we have with that energy, and we are in direct channeling. And that's what we mean when we say that sexual energy is healing energy. And if there's something that blocks us from experiencing it, then we also depriving ourselves from the healing possible.
It's life energy, right? It made life. It made you. It made me. It made us all. It, pretty much the number 2 prime directive. Number 1, I must survive. Number 2, the species must survive. And so that sexual imperative is so profound. And then, when we birth our babies, when we bring life here into this planet, that's sexual energy. That is a manifestation of sexual energy. And from that first breath, that first inspiration, right, when we embody, we incarnate, and there that energy is until we're done with this body, and we leave this life, and then we expire, we exhale for the last time, and we go and we leave, and that's all that vitality, that life force, to me, that's sexual energy. That's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I see the entire nature in a state of arousal and a state of sexuality. I mean, look at animals and you look at trees and flowers, and there's so much sexuality and arousal all around. Right?
Yeah, we're so blessed to be in this body, in this life, and to have access to stuff like this, where you can hear from people who have knowledge all over the world, and history and different cultures and all of this wisdom. I mean, when did people ever have access to this kind of information ever before, really? I mean, maybe if you're very lucky, you lived in the right culture at the right time and you were the right class and person and gender and so forth, you might have had access to some of this. So it's an amazing time. And I'm so delighted that you're putting this information out there for people for that reason, because we have got all this potential, and often we just need these gems or these nuggets to start embodying and experiencing and putting it together. And every step you take just encourages and supports you to go, oh, well, okay, I did that. Now I can do this. Oh, I did that. And look what happened. And that was great. And now I can go on and on. So, again, really encouraging people, especially if you're feeling discouraged or sad or broken or like there's something wrong with you, to know that there's not, and there are answers here and in other things that you're doing and other things people are doing to share this information. It's so empowering. Thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
There it is.
And thank you so much for all that you do, and your contribution is huge. And I really want to take a moment to acknowledge that, because I know that you've been doing this work for many years, and your book is really, as I said, revolutionary. So please, I encourage all of you to go and get a copy and read it, because this is really the groundwork. It's so well written and so enlightening that, yes, please. And yeah, so we have to wrap up this conversation, and I just want to ask you if you have any takeaways, so you can leave the audience with before we wrap it up.
You know, let your pleasure be your guide. You know, it's genius. It really is. So let that be your guide, and whatever's blocking you, and noticing the messages coming up, you can notice them and let them go, or do reprogramming skills, but find the things that give you pleasure and build on that. It doesn't have to be sexual. It could be stepping into the hot shower and you breathe and you make sounds of pleasure when you're under that beautiful water. Just that alone, acknowledging, oh my gosh, I'm so blessed that I got this shower, right? And taking those moments, and then you start to build on it. And yes, it can be sexual, because then next time you're having sex, maybe you will breathe more, and maybe you will make more sounds of pleasure, and maybe you will have that experience of gratitude and appreciation for the body that you have, or a partner that you might have. So this is how you build on it, but create this life, a more ecstatic life.
Right. And our senses, we've been given those 5 senses as precious gifts, and each sense gives us so much pleasure. So really enjoy those senses, our smell and taste and touch, and listening to music, and there's so many beautiful gifts that we've been given to experience and explore in this body temple. So be grateful for that. Cultivate the energy of gratitude, right?
Yes. Well, here in the United States, we just celebrated Thanksgiving, which is a complex holiday in many ways, but the basic idea is to have a day to be grateful and thankful. I think is a wonderful and beautiful thing to take the time and really express that. And it always makes me remember, this is a good thing to do every day. It doesn't have to be a holiday or special day, but the more we can appreciate ourselves, our partners, our friends, our communities, our bodies, our capacities, the happier we'll be.
Then that's the vibration that we're sending out, and that's what keeps bringing us more things to be grateful for. So we activating that energy of gratitude, and it brings magic. So it's really a primal force that we have to be aware of and cultivate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you. And you also had a beautiful gift that you are offering to the audience. So can you speak about that?
Yes, it's a 1 hour online video class called Orgasmic Abundance. And it's about a lot of the things we just talked about, but in obviously much more detail about things like using breath and sound and other tools and skills in order to access orgasm and expand orgasm. And while it is directed towards women, it also pretty much almost everything in it in terms of everybody can breathe, everyone's got their imaginations. There's a lot of useful things for penis owners as well as vagina owners. And also if you partner with people who have the equipment, it's also super useful. So that's the freebie. It's, I don't even remember, I don't know, hour and a half, somewhere in there, somewhere in that ballpark class, but you can watch it at your convenience or watch parts of it and come back. So enjoy that. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds very juicy and delicious, and I am sure you're gonna love it. Sheri, you have such a joyful and light and bubbly energy about you that you just make it a true delight. So thank you so much.
Well, it is my pleasure. You're most welcome, and thank you as well.
So here we are at the end of this session, and ciao for now, and lots of love. Bye. Thank you so much for being with us on this session. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did enjoy making it. Please share all your comments, insights, takeaways, questions in the comments below, and spread it with your girlfriends and sisters and friends so this healing can touch as many women as possible. And you may also purchase the All Access Pass to have lifetime access to this resource so you can revisit it and dive deeper again and again. And thank you to the Sacred Feminine Mystery School for sponsoring this summit. I wish you blessings on your journey, and until we meet again, all my love. Namaste.